Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another in our series of anaphylaxis campaign webinars. This is a very special one because it's taking place during our awareness week. All the team of the anaphylaxis campaign are walking 140,000 steps. Every single team member, including me, and believe me, I'm struggling, to raise money and also, but primarily to raise awareness so that our organisation can continue to give top-notch information and support to everyone who's affected by severe allergies. So do look out for that. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome tonight Julianne Ponan, who is one of our ambassadors and has been so for a few months now. Julianne has actually done a webinar for us before in February, which was incredibly well received. We got loads of positive feedback. And as a result, we decided to ask her back during our special week to do another webinar for us. And the title is A Conversation with Julianne Ponan. So unlike many of our webinars, which take the format of having a presentation, this will very much be a conversation between myself and Julianne. We've had a lot of questions that we know people would like to ask Julianne, but you're also very, very welcome to submit questions, if you haven't done so already, during the webinar. We will try to get round to answering all the questions, but if we don't, we will put a Q&A on our website with the webinar, and everybody can look at the Q&A later, and we will submit the questions to Julianne, and as homework she can give us all her answers to the later questions you submit. And that's the format we usually use, and that's usually incredibly popular. So please don't hold back in sending your questions in. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Julianne, those of you who, and I know she's very familiar to many of you, and she's Chief Executive of a top 14 allergen-free food supplier called Creative Nature. She looks far too young to do that, doesn't she? But she is. And she's a passionate campaigner, and I can vouch for that, and also an excellent speaker. And she very often gives talks about her personal journey with anaphylaxis and allergies. A little bit about Julianne's history. At the age of just 22, she founded her company, Creative Nature, and created a brand to help people just like her, because in Julianne's words, it feels like I'm allergic to everything. And I'm sure many of you listening to this webinar, be you parents or allergy sufferers yourselves, will empathise with that. Her allergies first came to light when she was at nursery, and she was given some cookies and some milk, and then she collapsed with breathing difficulties and ended up in paediatric intensive care, which is a very scary experience, as I'm sure many of you will be empathising as parents with that scenario. After undergoing tests every 6 months, it was discovered that Julianne was allergic to all nuts, chickpeas, lentils, and lots of perfumes and oils, even some that are used in face creams. Throughout her life, she's had numerous incidents where she's collapsed due to anaphylaxis and has revisited intensive care. Julianne is, as I say, a successful professional speaker and has shared her story across the UK. And last year, she was named as one of the Forbes 30 under 30s to watch. And as I say, we were absolutely delighted to invite her to become an anaphylaxis campaign ambassador. So I'll talk a little bit about the webinar this evening, and the format will be that I will, we've been given lots of questions to ask Julianne, and I will ask the questions and Julianne will respond. The areas that we hope to cover are eating out with a family, travelling, peer pressure, including emphasis on how you can say no, which I've heard Julianne speak about before, and you've got some excellent tips. Also, Julianne has agreed to speak to a little bit about allergies within the BAME community. And it's quite difficult sometimes to get speakers on that topic. So I will be absolutely delighted to hear Julianne's experiences in that area. But first of all, before we launch into those topic areas, I'm going to have a little introductory chat to Julianne, who's been sitting very nicely and quietly beside me. So, or not beside me, but beside me on the screen. So good evening, Julianne. It's lovely to have you with us this evening. Now, to start with, can you talk a little bit and set the scene about how and when your allergies were diagnosed?
For me, I don't personally remember that much when I first had my first ever anaphylactic shock, and that was because I was in nursery. So I was only 2 years old. However, that was the pivotal moment, really, because I was rushed to intensive care. I collapsed, I couldn't breathe, and no one knew that I had allergies at the time. So my mum and my dad were called, and they rushed to the hospital and found out that I had an allergic reaction. Now, from that point, that's when I went. I got referred from the GP to an allergist, and I went through a series of tests: blood tests, skin prick tests, challenge tests, lots of different things, as I was actually severely allergic to many types of foods, some stabilizers. It was quite a scary time for my mum, I would say, because she really didn't understand what allergies were, because it hadn't run in the family. No one in our family has allergies, and I was the firstborn child. So we found out that I was severely allergic to peanuts, all tree nuts, chickpeas, lentils, sesame, poppy seeds, and a whole list longer than that. But yeah, I think for me, it wasn't as much of a shock as it was to my family. And in a way, that's a good thing. And I want to sort of express that to parents, that the child doesn't always suffer as much as you think we're suffering. So yes, it is scary. And yes, we do worry. But sometimes you're worrying more than we are, because you're our parents and you love us so much. And my mum would constantly be worried. And I think that's a really important point, because I believe wholeheartedly that your allergies don't have to define you. They haven't stopped me. Yes, I have to take more precautions. Yes, I have to be more prepared. But actually, it's driven me to create things with purpose, and also connect with people who are in this industry, like Lynn, like Joanna, like so many people that I've met along the way. And this community is phenomenal.
You've been a brilliant role model, actually, as you know, Julianne, and we do use you in that way. But it's lovely to hear you articulate that. And we know, because our helpline is incredibly busy, and we've just expanded the number of staff actually who work on our helpline, because we've been so busy. And so many of the calls are related to parent anxiety when children start nursery, when they start primary school, when they start secondary school, when they leave home. So it is a very anxious time for parents, and it's very good to hear you express your opinion from the point of view of the child. That's really good. Now, you are allergic to a number of things, as we always say, 2/3 of people are allergic to more than one thing. So that's why we get a bit cross when people you talk about people being allergic to one thing, because that's not the usual state of things. So that's difficult. And also, a recent piece of work showed that there were up to 170 foods that people could be allergic to. So it's complicated. But I'd like to ask you, what's the hardest of your allergies to avoid?
I would have said peanuts and tree nuts to begin with. However, more recently, in the last 2 years, I would say chickpeas has become one of the things I find really difficult because it's in so many vegan foods. And for me, I find it, obviously it's not a top 14 allergen, and I completely understand that, and it's not it doesn't need to be in bold. However, I am still allergic to it. So I have to constantly scour the labels for chickpea, and it's in so many things, and it makes my life a bit more difficult. However, the severity, I would say, on going on a plane or traveling or anything like that, the most anxiety I get is from the peanut and tree nut. And I did have a dairy allergy when I was a child, but I grew out of the dairy allergy and I managed to complete the milk ladder, and that was fantastic. So there are people that can grow out of their allergies, but there are some allergies that you will not grow out of, and that's okay too. It's okay to know that. And yeah, I recently went to my GP, and he refused me to get another allergy test, which was interesting, because he said my allergies aren't going anywhere. However, I'm still going to push for an allergy test.
Yes, keep pushing. There's a number of interesting points there. First of all, it's brilliant that you've outgrown your milk allergy, dairy allergy, and undertaken the milk ladder, because actually milk is probably one of the most difficult, dairy is one of the most difficult allergens to avoid, because milk is in everything. It's in foods you would never think it's in. Though I'm noticing now that a number of foods, they're starting to take milk out where it isn't essential. And for example, you can increasingly buy branded breads that don't have milk in and things like that. But milk's a tricky one. So it's good that you've outgrown that. We know that peanuts, for example, people don't usually lose their peanut allergy, which is a shame, and probably why you're concerned about it. Obviously, it's one of concern for you, though there's some brilliant work taking place around immunotherapy peanuts, and let's hope in a few years' time that's very widely available for people. The other interesting point you raised was about your chickpea allergy. And I think what we're seeing in the anaphylaxis campaign is that the rise in people choosing to be vegans has altered the food landscape quite considerably. And things like chickpeas, pea protein are used far, far more, and they are actually increasingly difficult to avoid. I'll just do a little advert, because we've got an excellent webinar on vegan foods on our website, which I would advise people to take a look at. But certainly I can understand why you're now having difficulty avoiding chickpeas. That, even though as you say, it's not one of the 14 allergens, but all the allergens should be listed on pre-packed food. And food pre-packed for direct sale, of course, will have all the ingredients and the allergens listed from October. So that should help. I'd like to move on now to some of the topics that we've had some questions on to talk to you about, Julianne. And can we start with eating out? We're all very excited because we haven't been eating out. Due to the pandemic, we haven't been allowed to eat out. Then from April the 12th, we were allowed to eat out if we sat outside in the cold, and some of us did. And now we're allowed to eat out completely. Can you talk a little bit about your experience of eating out since we've been allowed to during the last month?
Yeah, sure. So it's definitely been a challenge, I would say. It was fantastic when it first happened and everything sort of opened up and you could go out, and my first thought was, oh wow, I can see some friends and meet up with them. However, my mind quickly started to go into, oh my gosh, I haven't actually eaten out for so long. What is it going to be like? Are people going to be trained in sort of allergen management and things like that? How are they going to cater for me? And that was a lot of the things that were running through my head. However, I needed to sort of push myself in a way to go to a restaurant and experience it. And I think it's really important that if you can, and if you're comfortable, call ahead. So research the restaurant that you're going to, which is what I did. I chose somewhere where I had been numerous times before, and it was a chain restaurant. I knew that they were absolutely fine with my allergies before lockdown, so I assumed that they would be okay now. However, I did call ahead and I said, oh, look, I have a severe allergies to peanuts, tree nuts. I listed them all. And they suddenly said to me, oh, I'm not sure if we can cater for you. And I said, I'm a bit unsure why that would be, because I've eaten at your restaurant so many times before. And they said, okay, if you come down, we'll see if we can cater for you. And I was thinking, oh gosh, can they cater for me? Can they not? Do I need to bring some food with me? And these are the things that I think that's why it's better to call ahead. And then you can make your own decision. If you're going out of your way to drive 30, 40 minutes to this restaurant, maybe you probably wouldn't go. However, this restaurant for me is 10 minutes down the road. So I decided it's worth giving it a go. So I went down there and got given the menu. And this is something that actually annoys me quite a lot. They always give me the gluten-free menu. And they just assume that I have a gluten allergy. And I don't actually have a gluten allergy at all. And I completely sympathize with people that are celiac, but I don't have that allergy. So to be given that menu and told I can eat anything on there, that it's safe, I was very surprised. And I said, no, actually, I'm allergic to all these things. So they didn't have the manager come out. They just had another waiter come out. And he said, oh, just choose one of the items and it should be absolutely fine. And that's when I started to think, is this safe for me? Can I actually eat this? However, he decided to go onto the app, and now they have everything on an app, which makes it super easy, and you can see exactly whether something contains nuts or contains dairy, whatever allergen it is. However, not all the ingredients are listed, which was the main problem for me, because as I said, I'm not allergic to just the top 14. I'm allergic to chickpeas, I'm allergic to lentils. So I explained this to him and he said, oh no, it'll be absolutely fine. So I asked him, can you please just go double check with the chef, because I'm not 100% sure with this. I have severe allergies. And he was more than happy to do it. And he actually said to me, yes, he came back and said, yes, it's completely safe. However, we cannot guarantee. And that's when it was, in the end, the onus was put on me to take the risk. And I did take the risk because I believed that I weighed up the risk. I had my 2 EpiPens. I'd eaten there before and I decided to eat, and I was absolutely fine. However, it's always your own choice and you have every right to say no. You also have every right to walk out of that restaurant. You do not need to order something, and you should never feel pressured to. I've walked out of many restaurants before where I haven't felt safe with the waiters and the staff, because you have to feel completely comfortable at the end of the day. This is your life. And this is why I think things like Owen's Law is going to be a fantastic movement in the allergy community, and something that can save lives. And to be honest, this is so important in a way, in addition to Natasha's law that's coming into place in October.
I think the experience that you've described is not unusual. And we always advise people, if you have the slightest doubt that you will not be safe, think carefully and you can always walk out. Now, that's not easy for everybody to do, you know, and you're quite a confident person, Julianne, having met you over a number of occasions. And I'm sure you would be confident enough to do that. And it's a hard thing to do for a younger person or somebody less confident. But you do have to feel safe. And it is the law that a restaurant will know all the ingredients in all of the food that they produce for you, not just the 14 allergens. And I think the 14 allergens are very important, but you know, I would repeat again, as you, in your experience, people are not only allergic to those 14 things, far from it. So they have to know the ingredients of everything that they are serving. And we don't expect everybody to be an expert in a restaurant on allergens, but there should always be somebody on the site who does understand allergens, does understand the risks, and can give confidence to the consumer. And that can be a manager, that can be the chef, it can be somebody who suffers from allergies themselves and has been designated that person. But whenever we're talking to food businesses, we always say you must have someone on the premises who can give confidence and explain to the consumer. Because I'm sure you enjoyed your evening, but it's not ideal that you have that difficult position where you had to make a decision and risk assess in that way. I mean, we all risk assess all the time, particularly people with severe allergies, but even so, that experience is not one that's ideal. And the other thing that you talked about always booking ahead, ringing the restaurant, paving the way, that's extremely good advice that to give to people. It takes away spontaneity, which is a shame, but I think in so many things, people who are severely allergic sometimes find it a little bit harder to be spontaneous, particularly around food and food allergies. So thank you for recounting that experience. Do you, I mean, we always say to people, either go to one of the big chains that have got it generally sussed, and most of them are members of the Anaphylaxis campaign, and you can feel pretty confident about those, or make a best friend of another local restaurant. I don't know which path you choose to go down.
I've tended to go more for the chains, to be completely honest. When I was, especially growing up as a teenager, I felt safer, and I don't know, I felt that there could be more repercussion for a chain than an individual, say, store. However, as I've grown up, I think that what I have found is small businesses do take more care because they're so involved with their business day to day. And like you said, making a best friend in it really makes a difference. It honestly does. And they really get to know you and understand you. And actually, when you're educating them about allergies, you're not just educating them, you're educating their whole team, because they're relaying it to their team, who this is what we need to do, because the more people that slowly expand and this web gets wider and wider, the more people will be able to eat out, the more restaurants will start catering for people like me and various other people. But I do think that it is a step, because some people think that allergy sufferers just shouldn't eat at the restaurant. They think we're too much hassle. And at the end of the day, I think they're losing business because of that.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, when I have 5 other friends and we're all going out for a meal and they don't have allergies, who gets to pick the restaurant? I'm picking the restaurant, and everyone else has to make do where we're going because I'm the one with allergies. So if they saw this like that in a more profitable area, they would be getting 6 people in their restaurant that actually, some of them don't actually have allergies. So
you're absolutely right. And I was actually involved in a training type session this morning with some people from food companies. And I always repeat what you've said because it actually makes good business sense. If you're a restaurant and there's somebody who has severe allergies who feels happy and confident to go to your restaurant, they'll be there with their family, they'll be there with their friends, they will make that recommendation. And bearing in mind, you know, there are about 2 million people who are affected by allergies. That's an awful lot of people, and that's an awful lot of business. So it does make good business sense, you know, that loyalty as well to a brand or to a restaurant because you feel safe. So it does make sense to get it right. And some of the chains are extremely good. You're right. They are extremely good, and I know a lot of them work very closely with us because they are concerned to get it right. So if we move on to the next topic, which is again one that's been very much affected by COVID, like everything else, and that's traveling. And a lot of us won't be traveling anytime soon. And at the moment, it's probably, I don't know if it's correct to say it or not, but it seems to be a bit of a muddle about where you can go and what you can do and what's safe and what's not. But putting that to one side, hopefully we will reach the stage where we are traveling again, both abroad and certainly in the UK. And I wondered if, because I've heard you talk about this before, Julianne, and you gave some fantastic tips on this, and I'm sure they're worth repeating. So can you talk a little bit about how you approach traveling?
Yeah, sure. So there's lots of different ways, really. So traveling, some people say, is obviously getting on a plane and going abroad. But also a lot of people are doing staycations at the moment in the UK. And it's the same principle, apart from you're not having that plane bit in the middle. And I would say for the people that are doing staycations, it's really important that you check everything you're going to do on your itinerary. So, for example, I'm getting married in this year sometime.
Oh, congratulations!
Thank you. So yes, later on this year, but to plan that and down to the venue, the catering, the where it's going to be, it was so much information that I needed to get. And I think that's is as well. Anytime I go on holiday or I'm planning on going on a trip, it's about spending time researching, because the more time you've spent before you go away, the easier it's going to be when you're out there. And always, I know my mum always says, don't think of the worst, but if you at least plan for the worst, it's only going to be a much better experience. So for me, I look at the place where I'm going to go. I check with the hotel. I asked her, if possible, speak with the manager to see what their allergen policies are. Because, for example, all inclusives, they're a fantastic sort of deal that you can get where you can eat and drink and everything's included. However, is that safe for a person with allergies, especially when it's more buffet? At the moment, it's not, because COVID, and they're not allowed to do that at the moment. But it's important to know, if there is a buffet, how safe are you at picking up those hash browns or eggs or whatever it might be? Are they cross-contaminated in any way? And you have to really understand with the staff members if that is the case. So I'd say that's the first bit of advice. Do a lot of research. Second bit is, if you're traveling on a plane, this is something that I have anxiety, and I get very, very frustrated about the night before. I pretty much don't sleep, and I hope in, say, 5 years' time, you'll speak to me and I won't be feeling that anxiety. But right now, I can tell you that it is real, and it does scare me. But by me thinking about why I'm going on this plane and thinking about the end goal, I think that's what gets me through it. And it's so important that people go to me all the time, oh, why you're traveling, oh, but you don't get to experience the food, it must be horrible for you. And I'm thinking, the food isn't everything. Like the culture, the places, like skydiving, swimming with sharks, all of these things that I've done, and I've not minded taking my own food with me. So I think you have to think about it from that perspective. But getting on a plane, there are certain things you can do. So first of all, check the airline policy, print it out and take it with you. That's key. Highlight all the bits that are relevant to you, because they will have things in there such as you can go on board and wipe down the seats before anybody else. You can have 2 PA announcements if you would like. There's other ones where, for example, with EasyJet, it's a completely nut ban policy. I know it's not all allergens, but a nut ban's still good. It's a step in the right direction. Also, with ones like EasyJet, you can actually put your allergies on their form when you buy a ticket, which is fantastic. When you scan your boarding pass, a member of staff will come to you and say, oh, you have allergies. Absolutely fantastic. It's why I've actually flown with them and chosen to fly them over other airlines. So yep, do that. Always carry an allergy pack. I have my own little allergy pack, and you can get them online where you fill them with sort of wipes, obviously your EpiPens or auto injectors, Piriton or whatever antihistamine you take as well. And just, I have a squishy thing in there as well for when I'm stressed out. It just helps me. And I always try and eat before I get on the plane. And something that I've either taken with me or something I know that is safe, so that I know that bit's sorted. And then if people on the plane are eating something I'm allergic to, hopefully they won't, but at least it's not, I can say something about it. So that's it really. And speak up to people around you. I know there are times when people will ignore you and carry on eating. I've had it numerous times. One lady unfortunately said, I'm not going to stop eating my peanut bar because I've bought it. But don't let that discourage you, because you have a voice and you can speak up, and your allergy is serious and it should be taken seriously. So just keep speaking up, and if they are human enough, which I hope we all are, they will understand.
And it's an important point actually, because at the Anaphylaxis campaign, we don't only feel really, really strongly that we want to help and give support to people directly, and people and their families who are affected by severe allergies, but we want to raise awareness amongst the whole population as well. And that's why, our work with schools, with universities, in workplaces generally is so important, because if someone can turn to, it's unlikely someone like that person would have said to you, I'm going to eat this because I bought it, if they really understood the implications of that. So that raising awareness piece is just so very, very important. I didn't know you were getting married this year. And can you tell us where you're hoping to travel?
Well, it's been booked for the last 2 years.
Oh,
We're meant to be going to Antigua.
oh.
It's only a very small wedding, just with close family, and I've never wanted a big wedding because I've always been scared to walk down the aisle with lots of people.
Well, Antigua is a phenomenal place. I've been lucky enough to go there, albeit briefly, and it's absolutely beautiful. So we will certainly keep everything crossed that you make that trip. And thank you very much, Julianne, for all those tips. We've got lots of information about travel on our website, but I think it's always so helpful for somebody to talk about their own personal experiences. Kat, the next topic I'd like to cover is a really, really tricky one, actually. And I don't think I have heard you talking about this. Certainly, I don't think we've had a conversation about it. And that's peer pressure and when it's okay to say no. And your thoughts, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
I think that university was probably my toughest time when I faced the most peer pressure, especially for allergies. When I first moved into halls, it was, and a few of the people in my halls didn't really think I had allergies. So I explained I had allergies to various things, and they said, well, you can't be allergic to everything. And I said, no, I'm not allergic to everything. But they just thought it would be, for example, I would get a rash or I might get a bit itchy. They didn't understand the severity of it. And they also didn't really understand what an EpiPen was at all. Now, they thought it would be funny to joke around with me and say, oh yeah, try this drink, try it, it's fine, it's got none of your allergies in. And I did, being completely open and honest, I did try it and I did have an allergy. And that was probably one of the scariest things that can happen. And obviously, speaking to my mum about it, she was very, very upset and annoyed at me. Luckily, I was absolutely fine. And yeah, I survived, obviously. But it was about not saying no at the right time and not understanding why I was saying no. I was too worried about not fitting in or not being cool or being called weird. And that really stemmed from when I had to sit on the allergy table in primary school. And in my primary school, they had something called an allergy table, which I still think is awful till today. And if they still do this in schools, this really does need to be addressed. Because at the time, I guess luckily, there wasn't that many people with allergies in my class because there was literally just me. And I would have to sit on this table all by myself. And all I would really want to do is sit with my friends. But I ended up losing friends because I was sitting on this table and people would say, oh, she's the weird girl with allergies. And my mum always taught me, no, speak up about your allergies. Actually, your allergies make you different and make you, she used to call it like superhuman, but I don't know whether that's probably the best term. But yes, it was hard for me, that, and especially growing up, I had things such as a child put walnuts in my pockets once. And these are all things when you're younger, you don't really fully understand why this happens. And I truly believe it's because there is a lack of education for children in primary schools about what allergies are and how to use an EpiPen or what an allergen might cause to someone. And this, you go through life with this, and like I said, I ended up in university with people that didn't understand allergies. And that's why it's so important with the anaphylaxis campaign, raising this awareness of allergies and us all speaking up about it. This is going to change it. But the biggest thing you have to remember is you're not alone. You really aren't. So you can say no 100%. And you don't have to feel odd or weird. And it is hard. I used to be probably the most shy person in my school. I didn't used to speak up. I couldn't even read out loud. I was that shy. And yet today I can speak on stages, I can speak to you, it doesn't have to define you, and you can overcome these things. And it just takes once that you have to be in a situation where you say no, and you will, trust me, you will understand or have someone on the back of your shoulder. I'll never forget one of my friends. She says she has her grandma on her shoulder, telling her, would you be happy to do, like, do I approve of this, or check your blind spot, for example, in your mirror, and things like that. If you have that person on your shoulder going, you can say no, it's okay. And people like me, people like the Anaphylaxis campaign, we're all here for you to be able to say no. And I would say that's the most important part.
That's fantastic. That was a fantastic series of points there, Julianne. And I think the point you raise about your experience at school is so important. We've got a huge schools programme at the Anaphylaxis campaign developed over the last couple of years. We've been in contact with every school, every independent school and every state school across the UK at primary and secondary level. Now, they don't all use our materials. They don't all open our emails. Some of it, I think, gets stopped at a certain place in the organisation before it reaches the people it needs to. And sometimes it just goes into spam or something, I'm sure. But we do have an opening rate of about 11%, I think it is on average, which doesn't sound very much until you think how many schools there are across the UK, 27,000 or something like that. So actually, it's a lot of schools. And we've just appointed another ambassador, like yourself, Tracy Dunn, who is our education ambassador. And she's the head of a large primary school in a beautiful place called Bradford-on-Avon. And she has about 450 pupils in that school. And I visited it, and I went into the lunch hall, and I knew she had a number of children who had food allergies, and one particular child who had loads of allergies, really, really a very significant number. And I walked into that dining hall, and all the children were sat together on long tables, and they were all eating. And I thought, oh my goodness, what's she done with the children, particularly the child who she'd been talking to me about with the extremely severe allergies. And afterwards, I said to Tracy, how did you achieve that? And she said, because we educate all the children about respecting the fact that some of them have severe allergies. They always are seated where the people who are monitoring the children, all the children at lunchtime, know those children. And the child who is extremely severely allergic, they keep a particular eye on. But he doesn't sit anywhere else. He doesn't sit on his own. He doesn't have a badge or any that says I'm the allergic child, but they just know, make sure everyone else knows, and they treat those children accordingly. And Tracy, again, has done webinars for us about managing risk at schools, and I would recommend those. But it's interesting because obviously your experience at school had a huge impact on you because you can remember it so articulately now, so that vindicates really how important it is to get that right. But you're also right that people should say no. They should be able to say no. Can you just, did you set about, or how did you set about having conversations with your peers? Did you use them? I know it sounds like you didn't have that great an experience in part at university, but were you able to get together with a group who understood and could support you?
It took time, and it took me having to explain my allergies more seriously, and I think when someone actually sees you have an allergy, which is what happened to me, they take a different, their attitude completely changes because they actually understand, and it shouldn't have to be that way. I really don't believe it's awful that someone has to go through all of that to then get taken seriously. However, as I went through university, I spoke to more and more people and I became more confident about talking about it. And I wasn't hiding it anymore. And that was the key part. Because all you're going to do if you hide your allergies is put yourself in a situation where you're not safe. And you'll feel you can't talk about it. And when will be the right time to talk about it? Dating with allergies is a bit of a nightmare, to be completely honest. I've been lucky to find the one that he doesn't have allergies, but he understands them to a T. And that's what's important. And he will eat whatever I'm eating. So he will eat as if he's an allergy sufferer, because he knows that he has to eat the same food as me at the end of the day.
It's very interesting because we do have a few calls to our helpline, often from parents actually, talking about dating and how they have those difficult discussions with their young adults about dating. And for example, one of our trustees always used to make me laugh, and she used to talk about the conversation she had with her son, because there's milk in many makes of condom. And she said it was probably one of the most difficult discussions she had with her young son. But he is still very severely allergic to dairy. And she could talk to him about avoiding dairy in certain foods, but you know, there's dairy in other things as well. So yes, you're right. I mean, it's when people talk about severe people having severe allergies, I and say, you know, there are other things that affect you in different ways, other conditions, etc. And I always say, if you're severely allergic, particularly to food, certainly, it affects every aspect of your life, and including dating. So that's quite an interesting one to bring up. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I think definitely. I think dating is a whole another conversation. Probably it was an interesting one though, because I remember my mum sitting me down and going, "You do know you cannot kiss someone that's eaten your allergen." And it didn't cross my mind at the beginning, but as you grow up, and yes, it is a really significant part of your life, and you do have to take these things seriously. But yes, it's always a funny conversation to have, and especially the one with the boy allergic to dairy.
And there have been academic papers written about kissing, people with severe allergies kissing. And when we made our film, Take the Kit, which hopefully many people will have seen, and if not, it's available on our website, and it's used now all over the world in a lot of clinics, etc., and used particularly with young people. The individual in that film who has the severe allergic reaction, which is shown very graphically on the film, it's because she kisses a young lad who's been eating peanuts and drinking, and she shares his drink, and he's been eating peanuts. So, and when we were discussing what the film should look like, the scenario, that's quite a common scenario. So, yes, that's an important point to raise, how careful people need to be and how embarrassing some of the conversation can be. The other area that I wanted to cover this evening, because again, you and I have not had a conversation about this area, but I know you've got thoughts on it, is about how allergies are dealt with within the ethnic minority communities. And it would be quite interesting to hear your views and your experience on that, Julianne.
Yeah, it was just an interesting sort of topic that I've been looking into recently in particular, as I looked at some of the research that was carried out in the US in 2012, where it found that around, I think it was 1 in 5 African American 2-year-olds had a positive skin prick test for an allergen, in comparison with 1 in 10 white children of the same age. So this was really interesting to me. So I sort of was like, really? I never thought that. It didn't cross my mind. So I started delving into a bit more of, is this across the UK? And I'm still sort of collating a lot of information at the moment, so don't quote me on everything, but it's definitely an issue that more people with BAME ethnic background have allergies, which
that is true. That is true.
it is, and it's quite scary to think that. And why would that be? And also, from my personal experience with my family, because I'm from a BAME background, so my father's from South America, my mum's from Kenya, and it's really interesting to see how my family dealt with allergies, and they just didn't think allergies were real. And that was a lot of the culture of my extended family as well, of aunties and uncles. And I wonder, is that the case? And a lot of people weren't diagnosed with allergies, and that's why it's sort of swept under the carpet. I don't know. It's a question I'd like to pose to people on what are their thoughts on that. And my thoughts are, it's a cultural thing, that there's something underlying there where people of these backgrounds don't believe in allergies as much. But over the years, I think it's slowly becoming more prevalent, and the more research that's done, we're finding out that it's significantly higher in BAME backgrounds.
That is true, and there is research. And the British Society of Allergy and Clinical Immunology are taking this very seriously and have set up a working group. And the consultant, who I'll call TK, who works out of Birmingham, he is leading that work. And it's true, we need to do far more to reach out to the ethnic minority populations, because it is a particular problem. And having talked to some very senior consultants, particularly some who work in London, Professor John Warner, who's now retired, but used to work at St Mary's in Paddington, he always used to talk to me about the diverse nature of his clinics. Similarly, there are other clinics in East London as well, which experience the same diverse populations, in Manchester. And so it's something that we certainly need to reach out. We certainly need to reach out to the ethnic population, and we certainly need to be more aware of the need to tailor what we say and do in our materials to make them as accessible as possible. Every member of staff at the Anaphylaxis campaign has had full diversity training, which is one step, but we certainly need to be absolutely aware of the need to reach out to those populations. And I think, Julianne, this is something that I'd be very interested in having a further conversation with you about, how we can develop some of the ideas that you may have as a young person, particularly, that may help us to take this work forward. So
I commend you, though, on the whole of the Anaphylaxis team doing a diversity training, because that is incredible. So many businesses are still to come on board with this, so thank you for doing that, because that is huge.
Well, it was a half day, just over a half a day we all had, and I think we all quite enjoyed it. Actually, it was very well done, but it certainly gave us all food for thought, around the images we use, the language we use, and so on and so forth. We've got a long way to go. We've got a long way to go, but it certainly raised awareness for us. Now, I'm conscious time is going on, and I've got some questions, but what we'll do is we will put the questions to you, Julianne, and we will then ask you very kindly to, if you could give us the answers, and we will put them on the website with this webinar. Can I just ask you, I think we've got time just to fit one in. And this question is, how do you cope with going for just a drink in a cafe surrounded by possible allergens?
That's a hard one, to be completely honest. It depends how big the cafe is, because I don't particularly like to go into too small, crowded areas. I feel that that's more difficult. So for example, if I can compare it to like being on a tube in the rush hour and someone's eating something and it's in the air, you can a lot of my allergies are airborne. So I would say it's picking the right cafe, first of all, to go into. Also, have a look at the cafe's menu before you go, because a lot of people put their menus online, and I think that is fantastic to be able to see that and that transparency. If your allergies are airborne, but you can say be within a certain area of someone drinking something you're allergic to, then I'd just say, yeah, just advise the waiter when you get there, this is my allergies. What types of alcohol can I have? What types of mocktails can I have, etc. They will be so accommodating, because every place that I have been to has so far on the drink side. I tend to stay away from coffees and tea, to be completely honest, from chains, only because what I found is they use the same cloth to wipe down I don't know what it's called, but the frothing machine. Or for example, they will put an almond milk, they'll just tip it out, rinse it, and then put an oat milk in, but they don't understand that I have the severe allergy to almond, and I'm not having dairy, so I would like oat, but that causes a bit of an issue. So I think it's just about the type of drink you have, really understand what you're going to have there, and then just be open with the people around you. That's the best I can say. And don't limit yourself. You can always walk out of the cafe. You can sit down. You can say, oh, actually, this isn't for me. I'm gonna try somewhere else.
And it comes back to that same point that you made quite early on in our conversation this evening. You can speak up and you can say, this isn't for me, and I'm going to say no, or I'm going to leave. Now, we've run out of time, Julianne, and I'm very sorry about that, because as usual, you know, we've got a good few more questions that we'd like to ask you, and we've had some lovely comments in on the chat as well, which I'll certainly pass on to you. But thank you so much for giving up your evening and being so open and so frank and so articulate about the issues that affect so many people who are affected by severe food allergies. So thank you so much for that. And thank you to everybody who has listened this evening. This webinar will be available for members on our website, and we will put the Q&A there too. Hope you will participate during the rest of what remains of our allergy awareness week, which runs to the end of this week till the 27th, and have a really nice rest of evening, everybody. And thank you again, Julianne.
Thank you.